Danish royal house is calling US President Donald Trump's abrupt cancellation of a state visit.
And surprise that I received the news that President Trump has cancelled his state visit to Denmark.
Donald Trump has never shied away from ambition. From walls at the southern border to reshaping NATO itself, his projects have always carried a sense of grandeur. But one ambition, above all others, stunned the globe and rattled America's allies: the bid to annex Greenland. In March 2025, standing before Congress, Trump thundered a declaration that echoed across the Arctic. "We will annex Greenland to the United States one way or another." The room froze. The world was shocked. Overnight, Greenland, the world's largest island, was thrust into the center of Trump's foreign policy. Why Greenland? The logic was blunt: power, security, and wealth. Beneath its ice lies an estimated 38 billion tons of rare earths: graphite, zirconium, niobium, and close to 17 billion barrels of oil. To Trump, Greenland wasn't merely frozen land. It was a vault overflowing with riches America must claim. But what began as bravado soon spiraled into an international standoff. Denmark, which governs Greenland, made its stance unambiguous. Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders. Greenland's own leaders echoed the rejection. "We are not a commodity. We are a nation." And while Trump pushed harder, waving Cold War-era documents and raising alarms about Russian submarines, another player was quietly maneuvering. That player was Canada. Ottawa saw an opening. Where Trump threatened, Canada built bridges. Where Washington demanded dominance, Canada offered collaboration. In late 2024, two little-known Canadian firms, Greenland Resources Inc. and Amaroq Minerals, entered discreet talks with European lenders and Greenlandic ministers. No fanfare, no bluster. Just patience, precision, and strategy. While Trump was making speeches, Canada was signing billion-dollar agreements. The centerpiece of Canada's Arctic strategy was a $3 billion mining pact linking Greenland and the European Union. More than a business contract, it was a geopolitical masterstroke. Greenland Resources, once a small molybdenum miner in Ontario, pivoted north. By December 2024, it secured backing from the European Investment Bank's Green Fund, plus Denmark's Export Credit Agency. By March 2025, Greenland's cabinet granted a 30-year license to extract molybdenum, critical for high-strength steel, nuclear power plants, EVs, and even hypersonic weapons. At the same time, Amaroq Minerals resurrected Greenland's Nalani goldfield, abandoned decades earlier due to harsh Arctic conditions. With £45 million in new capital from Denmark, Norway's pension fund, and UK-US private equity, the project roared back to life. Ironically, American investors were unknowingly financing Canada's win. Meanwhile, Trump's aides kept emphasizing defense. Pentagon reports warned that Greenland's northern coast left a seismic blind spot in US radar coverage. But independent analysts pointed to the true treasure: minerals, rare earths, oil, graphite, the raw inputs of the clean energy era. While Trump obsessed over sovereignty, Canada and Europe quietly transformed Greenland into a hub of cooperative development. And there was a twist. Greenland demanded conditions. 70% of all mining jobs had to go to locals. 10% of profits would flow into a Greenlandic sovereign fund, modeled on New Zealand's. For Greenland, this was sovereignty expressed in contracts. For Canada, it was influence achieved through respect. By aligning with Greenland's rules, Ottawa minimized political risk. US corporations, by contrast, resisted such conditions, leaving Washington sidelined. Trump's dream was crumbling not through military pushback, but through signatures and legal agreements. The Arctic was being redrawn, and for the first time, Canada was the central architect. By spring 2025, as Canada's $3 billion Arctic Pact took shape, reactions reverberated worldwide. Washington was in disbelief. Trump had framed Greenland as essential for national security, invoking submarines and Cold War radar. Yet Europe and Greenland pressed forward. On March 12, 2025, Copenhagen and Nuuk issued a joint rejection of U.S. claims. Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders. They warned that American coercion would undermine NATO's credibility. For the United States, it was humiliating. For Canada and Europe, it was a chance to rise. Europe had already passed its 2023 Critical Raw Materials Act, mandating that 25% of rare earths must come from allied, environmentally compliant suppliers. Greenland fit perfectly. Canada fit even better. Together, they launched the $3.1 billion Arctic Green Transition Fund, backed by Canada, the European Development Bank, and Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund. The fund financed ports, roads, and power infrastructure without a single American dollar. And yet, in a final irony, U.S. private equity capital was still feeding Canadian projects, meaning Trump's own financiers were inadvertently underwriting his failure. Across NATO, fault lines spread. Norway openly backed Denmark. France dispatched a nuclear submarine into Baffin Bay to reinforce Europe's commitment. Poland stayed silent, wary of antagonizing Trump. Analysts warned America was looking isolated. Instead of leadership, Washington was perceived as reckless. Instead of allies, it had growing suspicion. Canada, meanwhile, was rewriting the Arctic script. By accepting Greenland's sovereignty clauses, local hiring, profit sharing, environmental safeguards, Ottawa built genuine trust. And trust translated into leverage. For Greenland, this wasn't only economics, it was self-determination. By anchoring itself to Canada and Europe, it gained security against U.S. pressure while carving out a stronger global role. Greenland was no longer a territory on the market. It was charting its own course. Inside Washington, the Pentagon scrambled. Options floated included symbolic shows of force, flyovers, landings, Arctic drills. But as Denmark was a NATO member, any U.S. aggression risked triggering Article 5, meaning conflict with its own allies. Military options evaporated. Diplomatic ones had already failed. Canada's playbook, however, only expanded. Ottawa's so-called Arctic hexagon strategy stretched from Baffin Island's iron ore to Greenland's rare earths, linking into joint space facilities with NASA and the Canadian Space Agency. It wasn't only about mines. It was about shaping the entire Arctic economy of the future. For Greenland, this was a transformation. Once seen as a land up for purchase, it became a case study in sovereignty. Its future fund promised long-term wealth. Its citizens were promised jobs, training, and empowerment. Trump, by contrast, was boxed in. His fixation on annexation left the U.S. isolated, even mocked. Allies drifted, rivals gained ground, and Canada quietly emerged as the unexpected winner of the Arctic game. The Arctic, once dismissed as frozen wilderness, had become a geopolitical chessboard. Here, contracts mattered more than tanks. Trust mattered more than threats. And for the first time, a middle power like Canada had outmaneuvered a superpower. Greenland, once treated as a prize, now stood as a sovereign actor in the 21st century. And so, as Canada secured its Arctic crown, Trump's gamble ended in failure. The U.S. didn't just lose Greenland, it lost credibility. Canada, meanwhile, won the North. Before we wrap up, if you found this breakdown revealing, don't forget to subscribe. We're here to bring you the stories others ignore. And remember, the best comment gets pinned.